The first warning sign wasn't the blood staining their battered armor, and it wasn't the way the Craxian warriors strutted into Nexus Station's diplomatic lounge as if they owned every polished tile. No, the real warning, one that every seasoned diplomat in the galaxy should have heeded, was the sudden, suffocating silence that fell over the room as soon as they started talking. It was the tallest Craxian, a reptilian mountain in ceremonial plate, who broke that silence with a gesture as subtle as a meteor strike. He slammed his gauntlet fist onto the crystalline conference table, sending shockwaves down the line of gathered delegates. Every glass vibrated. A few of the more fragile trade ministers jumped in their seats. "We have returned victorious from the death world they call Earth," he bellowed, voice scraping across the crystalline walls with the raw, unvarnished pride of a warlord. At the end of the table, Ambassador Wilson nearly spat out his coffee. The old Earth diplomat had survived 40 years of interspecies negotiations, betrayals, and more than one food poisoning incident, but nothing in his experience quite prepared him for what he saw now. Around him, a ring of alien delegates, the elegant, blue-skinned Alterine trade ministers, vegan negotiators with their crystalline skin aglow, even a cluster of insectoid hive minds feverishly taking notes with twitching limbs. All eyes locked on the blood-stained warriors. Fascination. Horror. Not a hint of relief. "Death world?" echoed the lead Alterine, her face draining to a shade of blue so pale it was almost translucent. "Earth is officially classified as a garden world, peaceful, stable biosphere." The Craxian commander, an emerald-scaled giant, ritual scars splitting the skin across his long snout, barked out a laugh so harsh it sounded like gravel in a grinder. "Peaceful? We barely survived 3 cycles on that nightmare planet. The apex predators there. Nothing like we've seen in any corner of known space." Wilson set his coffee cup down with exaggerated care. There was a cold feeling settling deep in his stomach, and it had nothing to do with the station's recycled air. One of the vegan diplomats, his crystalline body pulsing with inner light, leaned forward eagerly. "Tell us of your conquest. What manner of beast did you face?" "Nast," hissed the second Craxian, his voice sliding over the word like a knife. "Small, but terrifying. Vicious, fanged, they hunt in coordinated packs. Nightmares leaping from the shadows." He shivered, the scales on his back clattering softly. "And the howling. Their forests echo with it through the night." A ripple of awe passed around the room. Wilson felt his jaw tensing. The commander, gaining confidence, began to pace behind his warriors, every bit the general recounting a hard-won campaign. "We fought with honor. Great predators, claws and jaws strong enough to crush bone. Pack hunters, surrounding their prey, striking without mercy. Some fell to our weapons, but many vanished back into the wild." "Incredible," whispered the Altarian. "How many warriors did you lose to these apex predators?" "None." The commander's chest swelled with pride. Though it was close. The largest predator, yellow eyes, teeth like daggers, cornered 3 of my best soldiers near a residential zone, as the planet's abandoned database called it. "We thought them lost." Wilson's hands curled into fists under the table. He kept his face blank. "But you prevailed?" asked one of the hive minds, its many eyes glinting. "Through cunning and superior tactics," the smaller Craxian boasted. "We drove the beast off, forced it to retreat from our wounded. Cowardly, but intelligent. Earth's predators understand force." "And the pack hunters?" pressed the vegan diplomat. "Vicious." The commander seemed to savor the word. "Smaller, more numerous. They attacked in groups, coordinated, frighteningly precise. We met a pack of at least 8 near what looked like an abandoned settlement, surrounded our scouts, preparing to strike." At this, Wilson rose to his feet, movements slow, deliberate. Every gaze in the room followed him. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "Did you say these predators were near residential areas?" The commander nodded, pride undimmed. "The entire planet is a hunting ground. Abandoned settlements everywhere, overrun by these creatures. The inhabitants must have fled or been consumed long ago." "I see." Wilson's voice stayed carefully neutral. "And you fought them off?" "Naturally. The commander's pride flickered with a hint of discomfort. It required our full arsenal. The pack hunters were especially dangerous. Primitive communication, barking, whining, even sounds almost like... Like what? Wilson prodded, gaze fixed, like they were trying to speak. The commander shook his head. Nonsense, obviously, but the vocalizations don't match any known animal in our databases. The conference room, moments before a riot of whispers, fell absolutely silent. Wilson walked the length of the table, diplomatic shoes ticking on the polished floor. Alien delegates tracked him, some with growing suspicion. These pack hunters, he said conversationally, the ones making speech-like sounds. How big were they? The smaller Craxian measured with his claws. Varied, but the largest maybe knee-high to a standard humanoid. Brown, black fur mostly. Some golden ones too. Wilson nodded. And they were protecting the residential areas? Guarding them, yes. Extremely territorial, especially near the smaller dwellings, though they seemed abandoned. Wilson's brow furrowed. And the large predator with yellow eyes? A solitary hunter, the commander said, scales rippling. 4 times the size of the pack hunters. Orange and black striped. It was patrolling rows of plants, cultivated space, maybe a garden. When it saw our warriors, it came for them. We only drove it off with suppressing fire. But you didn't kill it? The commander's scales darkened. No, it retreated when we brought up reinforcements. Tactical intelligence. Knew it was outmatched. Wilson reached the far end of the table, turned, and surveyed the room. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored clusters. There's been a misunderstanding. A hush fell, so deep you could hear the faint hum of the station's atmospheric systems. What kind of misunderstanding? The Altairian delegate's voice quivered. Wilson's smile was sharp, not friendly. For starters, Earth isn't abandoned. Current population, about 8 billion humans. Give or take a few million, depending on the season. A crystalline gasp. 8 billion, the vegan delegate whispered. Alive and well. Wilson nodded. We're quite fond of the place. Been living there for several 100,000 years. Longer, if you count our evolutionary forebears. The Craxian commander's jaw unhinged, rows of predatory teeth on display. Impossible. We found no evidence. No cities, no technology, nothing. Oh, you found cities. Wilson's tone was gentle, almost pitying. You just call them abandoned. Easy mistake. Humans tend to blend in, build with the ecosystem, very sustainable. And the predators. Yes, the predators, interrupted the smaller Craxian. We described them. Pack hunters, knee-high, furred, barking. Dogs, Wilson said, almost kindly. Canis familiaris. Humanity's oldest friends. We've bred them for thousands of years. Companionship, work, protection. That pack hunting you saw? Probably just a family walking their pets. The barking? Communication. They were warning you to stay away from their homes. A ripple of shock swept through the delegates. The commander looked like someone had kicked out the rungs of his pride. And the large predator with stripes? The Altairian ventured. A house cat, Wilson replied deadpan. Felis catus. Maybe someone's pet. Probably named Whiskers or Mittens. Domesticated for pest control and companionship. They purr when happy, very therapeutic after a long day. The Altairian made a strangled sound. You mean they fought your pets? To be fair, Wilson conceded. You mentioned something about fighting off apex predators with claws and crushing jaws. He paused, eyes gleaming. I'm genuinely curious about that one. The Craxian commander shrank, his scales dulling. Massive, gray-brown beasts. As large as us. They attack from water. Wilson nodded. Seals. Marine mammals. Mostly harmless unless you're a fish. Protected species in many regions. Environmental fines for harming one would bankrupt a small planet. The conference room had become graveyard silent. The alien faces caught somewhere between horror and laughter. So, to be clear, Wilson continued, voice silky, you landed on Earth without permission, attacked several family pets and some local wildlife. Then came here to boast about your conquest of our death world. The Craxian commander opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. Nothing. The thing is, Wilson said, never losing his smile. Earth really is dangerous. You just met the friendliest residents we have. The word friendliest hung in the air like a curse. Oh yes, dogs love everyone. Cats are indifferent unless you cross them. Seals are practically pacifists, unless it's breeding season. He leaned forward, eyes glittering. You didn't land during breeding season, did you? The Craxian's expressions went from shock to pure dread. The question now, Wilson went on, is what we do about this diplomatic incident. You broke and entered, committed property damage, assaulted protected wildlife. We didn't know, the commander stammered. Of course not, Wilson agreed. That's why I have a proposal, a cultural exchange program. You come back to Earth, properly invited this time. We'll give you a real tour. The smaller Craxian turned greenish. What kind of educational experience? Oh, we'll introduce you to some of our other animals. Bears, for instance, very protective mothers. And the big cats, lions, tigers, leopards. Not house cats, mind you, the real thing. The commander's voice was a whisper. Interactive. And of course, Wilson continued, smile going predatory. We'll show you real human settlements. Cities with millions of people. You'll love New York, or Tokyo, or Mumbai. He spread his hands. Amazing what 8 billion apex predators can accomplish when they put their minds to it. The room was so silent, the air systems sounded like distant thunder. Apex predators, the Altarian echoed. Wilson turned, eyebrow raised. Did I not mention? Humans are Earth's apex predators. Have been for quite a while. We're just like dogs and cats, so we keep them around. He turned back to the Craxians. The animals you fought weren't defending themselves from you. The meaning sank in, slow and poisonous. They were defending us from you. The shuttle ride down to Earth was tense, to put it lightly. 3 Craxian warriors, scales buffed and armor gleaming, sat rigidly in their crash seats, claws drumming against the metal, doing everything possible not to meet the eyes of the human seated directly across from them. Dr. Patricia Coleman, professor of xenobiology at the Terran Institute of Advanced Study, beamed at them over the edge of her tablet. She'd volunteered for this cultural exchange the second she'd heard the proposal. Her colleagues had called her reckless, even foolhardy. Why take personal responsibility for interstellar trespassers who had, just days earlier, attempted to pacify half a suburb's worth of beloved pets? But to Coleman, this wasn't madness. This was the chance of a lifetime. She peered at her anxious charges, trying to break the ice. So, excited for your first real look at Earth? The commander, he'd introduced himself as War Leader Thack, though he'd nearly choked on the war leader part when shaking hands with Wilson, managed a low, uneasy whimper. We have already seen your world. Oh, that barely counts. Coleman's grin was disarmingly cheerful. You spent, what, 3 days in the wilderness? That's like judging all of human civilization based on a gas station restroom. One of the Craxian lieutenants, Tox, bristled at that, but the shuttle's gentle jolt as it broke through Earth's atmosphere distracted him. Coleman didn't miss a beat. You're in for the full experience today. Their shuttle settled with a soft hydraulic sigh onto a small landing pad behind a house in suburban Denver. Coleman unbuckled her harness with practiced ease. I should mention the Hendersons, our hosts, are having a little get-together today. Nothing fancy, just a standard Saturday afternoon barbecue. Barbecue. Thack's scales rippled with confusion. Cookout, Coleman explained. Humans prepare food outside and eat together in groups. Social bonding ritual. She didn't add that she'd specifically asked the Hendersons to invite the entire neighborhood. Education, after all, was best served communal. The ramp lowered with a hiss, letting in sunlight and the distant chorus of laughter, clinking glasses, the sizzle of something cooking over flame, and the energetic shriek of playing children. Coleman strode out, stretching, inhaling deeply. Ah, smell that? Civilization. The Craxians followed, hesitating. Their hands hovered awkwardly near empty holsters. Coleman had insisted they come unarmed. Diplomatic courtesy, she'd said, which now felt like an exceptionally bad trade. A robust human voice rang out from the back patio. Dr. Coleman, you made it. Tom Henderson, 6'2", linebacker build, graying hair, and an apron that red-kissed the cook, waved them over, spatula in hand. Around him, 30-some humans mingled, holding cold drinks, plates of food, or gossiping on the grass. "Tom, thanks for hosting." Coleman introduced her companions with a flourish. "These are our visiting dignitaries from the Craxian Empire." Tom's face split in a genuine, open smile. "Awesome. Welcome to Earth, fellas. Hope you're hungry. Burgers, brats, some salmon that'll knock your socks off." Tox, the smallest Craxian, instinctively took a step back. This human was larger than most of his warriors, approached with casual confidence, and wore what looked, alarmingly, to be bloodstains on his apron. "Is that blood?" he whispered, eyeing Tom warily. "Barbecue sauce," Coleman replied, amused. "Tom takes grilling very seriously." "You bet I do." Tom wiped his hands on the apron, reached out, and engulfed Thac's claw in a handshake that could have crushed steel. "Tom Henderson, run the hardware store downtown. Good grip, like that in a person. Beer." Thac blinked, then glanced sidelong at his subordinates, trying and failing to conceal his nerves. The words were cut short by a sudden, explosive burst of barking. A golden retriever barreled around the corner, tail wagging like a metronome on overdrive, followed by what seemed to be half the neighborhood's canine population. The Craxians went rigid, hackles raised. "That's just Bailey," Tom called, as the golden retriever skidded to a halt in front of the aliens, tongue lolling, tail sweeping great arcs in the dust. "She's our welcoming committee." "Bailey, sit." Bailey flopped onto her haunches, tail wagging with seismic enthusiasm. "She is what we call a good girl," Coleman explained, as the warriors stared, unblinking. "Excited to meet you." That tail wag means hello. She's saying, "Please be my friend." The largest Craxian muttered, "That's the pack leader." Tom laughed. "Bailey? She's terrified of the vacuum cleaner. Did corner a raccoon in the garage once. Barked at it for hours." By now, more dogs had joined. A German shepherd, a couple of beagles, a St. Bernard as massive as the aliens themselves. All tails, all enthusiasm. "They're coordinating," the smallest Craxian whispered, eyeing the gathering canine horde with dread. "Hoping for drop food." More like, Coleman corrected, standard Pavlovian response. Humans plus outdoor eating equals potential treats. "Dr. Coleman." Another voice, bright and cheery. Mrs. Patterson from across the street, barely 5 feet tall, silver-haired, with a smile warm enough to thaw comets. She approached with a plate of cookies. "I brought snickerdoodles." The third Craxian, who had thus far managed to remain silent, made a strangled sound somewhere between a whimper and a kettle letting off steam. "How lovely." War Leader Thac. "May I present Mrs. Patterson?" She used to be a high school principal. Mrs. Patterson beamed up at the towering reptilian. "Oh my, you're a tall one. And such interesting skin. Is that natural coloring?" Thac's jaw opened and shut at a loss. This tiny elder was studying him with the clinical eye of someone judging livestock at a county fair. "Mrs. Patterson has lived here 40 years. Raised 3 children, 7 grandchildren, once chased off a black bear that was digging in her trash." "It was just a little black bear," Mrs. Patterson said modestly. "More scared of me than I was of it. I'd have to get quite firm. Use my husband's old golf club to make noise." Poor thing ran back to the woods. The Craxians exchanged alarmed glances. This fragile creature had single-handedly faced down a predator that could have killed her with a swipe. "Bears are generally timid around humans," Coleman said. "They've learned to avoid us. Evolutionary pressure." Tom, flipping burgers, joined the conversation. "Did you hear about the mountain lion they relocated last week? Down by the elementary school. Fish and wildlife darted it, moved it back up to the forest." Several humans drifted closer, drawn by curiosity. A woman in running gear nodded. "I saw tracks on the trail yesterday, drought's pushing them down." A park ranger added, "Makes sense. They're just looking for water for food." Thac, face now unreadable, stared at these humans. They discussed apex predators the way you might discuss the weather, casually, as a matter of routine. "Mountain lions," Coleman explained, "are big cats. Not like the house cat you met. These are apex predators, 8 feet long, 150 pounds of muscle. designed for killing prey. And they just wander your settlements? The smallest Craxian asked. Sometimes, the park ranger said with a shrug. Usually avoid people, but now and then a young male gets curious. We just relocate them. No harm, no foul. You relocate them? Thac's voice quavered. Catch and release. Protected species. The ranger's tone grew serious. If they attacked livestock or pets, it'd be different. But mostly, they just want to be left alone. And the bears? Tox asked. We get bears all the time, Tom said, cheerful. Black bears, sometimes brown. Last summer, mother and cubs in the drainage ditch behind the grocery store. Living in your settlement. Technically just outside it. Tom scratched his head. From a bear's point of view, probably no difference. We put up signs, warn people not to get too close. Some folks think cute means safe. It doesn't. Coleman watched the Craxians process this, seeing worldviews fracture and realign. The thing about Earth is humans have been dominant so long that most animals have adapted to our presence. We're not really in the ecosystem anymore. We're more like a force of nature. Mrs. Patterson piped up like mountains, or rivers, or storms. Animals work around us. A low, rumbling growl rippled across the backyard. Every human froze. The Craxians reflexively reached for weapons they didn't have. That's just Duchess, Tom said, relaxing. Mrs. Chin's mastiff. She's probably waking up from her nap. Around the side of the house lumbered a Tibetan mastiff. 200 pounds of fur and confidence, eyes wise and unbothered. She's beautiful, Coleman said. 8 years old, a bit arthritic but thinks she's a puppy. Duchess ambled over, sniffed the Craxians, then flopped down and yawned. She's deciding if you're interesting enough to warrant standing up, Tom explained. Duchess is energy conscious. The third Craxian stared. That is not a dog. That is a small bear. Coleman grinned. Common mistake. Mastiffs were bred to guard livestock from real bears, wolves, leopards, anything that might threaten the herd. Bred? Thac's voice cracked. Selective breeding. We've been modifying dogs for thousands of years. Hunting, herding, guarding, companionship, even just to look cute. She gestured at the assembled dogs. Each one represents generations of human-driven evolution. You engineer your companions, Tox marveled. Coleman's smile was sly. When you put it like that, it sounds sinister. We think of it as collaborative evolution. We give them food, shelter, care. They give us loyalty, protection, comfort. Mrs. Patterson slipped Bailey a treat, the retriever accepting it with a gentle wag. Dogs are just wolves that learn to live with humans. They domesticated themselves, in a way, came for the scraps, stayed for the company. Wolves, the smallest Craxian, looked ill. Oh yes, Canis lupus. Dogs are a subspecies of wolf, can still interbreed. Wolf dogs aren't legal pets in most places, though. You keep domesticated wolves. And you have wild wolves, and bears, and mountain lions, and coyotes. Coyotes are like small wolves. Plus elk, deer, moose, bison. Alligators in the south. Venomous snakes, poisonous spiders. The backyard went quiet. Every human now listening with poorly concealed amusement. But, Coleman said, voice shifting to that lecturing tone, all these animals have learned to coexist with humans. The smart ones avoid us. The ones that aren't smart. Thack swallowed. What about them? Coleman's smile took on a predatory gleam. That's where things get interesting. The animals you met, they weren't trying to avoid you. The words hung heavy in the afternoon. They were protecting their territory from an unknown threat. In the case of the dogs, they were protecting their humans. That was when Mrs. Chin's cat emerged, tail high, moving with the slow, deliberate grace of a creature confident of its domain. The black and white feline ignored the assembled crowd, stopped before Thack, and began cleaning its paw. Is this the same as the orange one we fought? Thack asked, staring. Different breed. That's Midnight, a tuxedo short hair. The other was a tabby, maybe a Maine Coon if it was huge. Cats have been with us for 9,000 years. Pest control at first. Now, companions. Coleman crouched, extended her hand. Midnight sniffed, then consented to a head scratch, purring low and thunderous. That sound means she's content. More neighborhood cats appeared, called by some mysterious signal, arranging themselves in a circle, watching with patient intelligence. "They're gathering," Tok said, voice shaking. "It's dinner time. Mrs. Chun feeds the strays every evening. Some aren't really strays, just freeloaders." Coleman stood, brushing cat hair from her knees. "We should get moving. I arranged a tour of downtown Denver. There's more to Earth than backyards and barbecues." The drive from the neighborhood to downtown Denver was a window into Earth the Craxians had never imagined. Part zoo, part fortress, part playground, and part unpredictable wilderness. Dr. Coleman, ever the educator, provided running commentary as the human-operated vehicle threaded through suburban streets and then merged onto the main avenues of the city. "Notice how the wildlife coexists with us, even in urban spaces," she pointed out, gesturing as a flock of Canada geese meandered across a soccer field while kids played nearby, completely unconcerned. "Humans have built cities, but animals adapt remarkably well. Urban coyotes hunt in smaller packs, hawks nest on office towers, even spiders in subway tunnels have evolved new prey strategies." At a red light, Coleman nodded toward a hawk circling above a gas station, its shadow flickering over a cluster of squirrels raiding the trash cans below. The smallest Craxian, Tox, pressed his face to the glass, wide-eyed. "Those workers," he said suddenly, pointing to a construction site where several humans in hard hats shared their lunch break with a family of raccoons. "Aren't they concerned about predators?" "Raccoons aren't really predators," Coleman replied with a chuckle. "They're omnivores, very intelligent. They've learned to open garbage bins, door latches, even solve puzzle boxes. Tool users, actually. There's a study where raccoons learned to wash food before eating, then taught that skill to their kids. That's cultural transmission, just like humans." The shuttle truck stopped at the steps of the Denver Museum of Natural History, where a group of school children, about 33rd graders, chaperoned by 2 teachers, were having their afternoon snack on the lawn. Nearby, several urban deer grazed under the bored eyes of security guards. Coleman beamed. Perfect timing. Field trip day. As the vehicle door slid open, the children stared, slack-jawed, at the sight of 3 armored Craxians and their ever-smiling human guide. One of the teachers, Angela, recognized Coleman immediately. "Dr. Coleman, are these your alien visitors?" "Indeed they are. Kids, these are some friends from very far away. They want to learn about Earth's animals." 30 faces turned up with open curiosity. A brave boy with a juice box stepped forward, offering it in a gesture of galactic goodwill. "They're so tall," a girl whispered to her friend. "Are you soldiers?" Thack looked down at her. She could not have weighed more than 30 kilos, was utterly unarmored, and watched him with a mix of awe and scientific detachment. "Yes, I am a warrior." "Cool. My dad was in the army. Soldiers are brave." She studied him for a moment, tilting her head. "Are you brave?" Thack opened his mouth, then hesitated, searching for an answer in his own heart. "I thought I was." Billy, the juicebox boy, piped up, "He's scared of our hamster." The crowd giggled. "But hamsters are really small, so that's silly." "What's a hamster?" asked the 3rd Craxian Thal. "Oh, you have to see," Coleman said, delighted. "Angela, is Chester around?" "Of course," Angela replied, producing a small cage from the shade of a tree. Inside, a golden-brown rodent, barely the size of a fist, was energetically running on a wheel. "This is Chester, our class pet. A Syrian hamster." The Craxians crowded closer, awestruck. "It is very small," Thal observed. "Hamsters are prey animals," Coleman explained. "Bottom of the food chain. Their survival strategy is rapid reproduction and hiding from everything larger than themselves, which is basically everything." Angela added, "But Chester's perfectly safe in captivity. We feed him, clean his cage, make sure he gets exercise." "You keep prey animals as companions, too?" Tox asked, trying to process this. "Oh, yes. Hamsters, guinea pigs, rabbits, birds, fish, reptiles. Some families keep pet snakes, lizards, or turtles. There's even a guy in town with a pet alligator, though that's not really legal." The children returned to their snacks, sharing crumbs with squirrels that skittered fearlessly among them. The Craxians watched, baffled, as these tiny, Fragile humans played and ate surrounded by animals they'd assumed to be dangerous. The children shouted, ran, played tag. No one so much as flinched at the sight of a deer or squirrel. They showed no fear, Tox whispered, voice tinged with something like awe. Why would they? Coleman shrugged. This is their environment. There's nothing dangerous here. But there are predators everywhere, Thack insisted. Coleman looked around the tidy museum lawn, pointed out some deer, a few squirrels, and a couple of sparrows. Nothing here. Not the right habitat for big predators. Urban wildlife sticks to parks, drainage ditches, areas with cover and food. Even if a mountain lion wandered into downtown, it'd avoid groups this size. Predators prefer isolated prey. What if it was desperate? Or protecting young? Thal pressed, his military mind working. Then animal control would tranquilize it and move it back to the wild. Standard operating procedure. Humans are very good at managing risk. Angela intervened in a brewing snack time dispute between two boys and a particularly bold squirrel. Timothy, share your sandwich or put it away. Don't tease the wildlife. The squirrel, denied its prize, scolded the group from a branch overhead in rapid-fire chittering that sounded for all the world like cursing. It's expressing displeasure, Coleman explained, grinning. Squirrels have complex vocalizations. They warn about predators, describe threat levels, even identify specific humans who are stingy with food. The museum itself was a revelation. The children led their alien guests through exhibits on prehistoric and modern predators. Tyrannosaurus Rex loomed over the entrance, its jaws frozen in a roar. Saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, and mammoths stalked through dioramas of ancient landscapes. A full-size polar bear model stood like a ghostly sentinel. These creatures lived on your world. Thack stared up at the massive bones. Some still do, in modified forms, Coleman said. Others went extinct when climates changed or because of human expansion. She paused at a display on contemporary bears. There are 8 species worldwide, though North America only has 3. Black bears are common. Those are the ones Mrs. Patterson chased. Brown bears include grizzlies and Kodiaks. Polar bears live in the Arctic. The third Craxian, awestruck, asked, Polar bears are largest? On land, yes. Males can reach 800 kilograms. They're superb swimmers, tracking seals across sea ice. But most live far from human settlements. The museum's next section was more sobering. An entire gallery on human-wildlife conflict, filled with statistics, news clippings, and safety tips. The graphs showed that attacks by large predators on humans were extremely rare and usually resulted from humans ignoring warnings or behaving recklessly. The animals aren't malicious, Coleman said. They're just responding to threats or opportunities. Most avoid us entirely. But surely some hunt humans? Thal ventured, voice small. A few. Saltwater crocodiles, some large cats, certain sharks. But those are mostly in remote areas. The most successful animals are those that avoid us. The children clustered around an interactive exhibit on dangerous creatures. Venomous snakes, spiders, parasites that could kill in 100 creative ways. Coleman watched a 7-year-old correctly identify a black widow spider and recite its danger level. By age 10, most kids here could distinguish hundreds of species, recognize threat signals, and know what to do. Survival education starts early. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and don't touch the pretty spider. The smallest Craxian had gone quiet, lost in thought. Your species trains its offspring for warfare against the environment. Thal said finally, almost reverently. Coleman's smile was soft. We prefer to call it basic education. It's just part of growing up on Earth. As they prepared to leave, a little girl shyly approached Thack and handed him a drawing. A friendly dinosaur in a party hat. I drew this for you. Dinosaurs are extinct, so they can't hurt you anymore. This one's nice. Thack stared at the picture, then at the child, overwhelmed by a tidal wave of emotions he couldn't name. And then, in the distance, sirens began to wail, shrill, insistent, getting closer. The humans didn't look alarmed. Instead, Coleman brightened. Looks like our next stop is ready. Shall we? The sirens weren't for them. As it turned out, The final lesson for the Craxians awaited at a place they least expected, Earth's Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center outside Denver wasn't anything like what the Craxians had expected. As their truck followed the ambulance through the security gates, Thack braced himself for primitive cages and squalid animal pens. Instead, what greeted them was a pristine complex of white buildings, sunlight gleaming on glass and stainless steel. Everything about the place radiated precision and purpose. Humans in medical scrubs moved briskly between wings, carrying diagnostic tablets and boxes of supplies. There were no bars, no whiffs of fear or decay, only order, care, and the unmistakable sense of expertise. Coleman led the way, her visitors trailing behind in silence. "We bring Earth's most dangerous predators here when they need help," she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Injured eagles, orphan bears, wolves hit by vehicles, mountain lions with broken bones. This facility treats over 3,000 animals every year. Thal could only stare. "You heal the creatures that hunt you?" Coleman's eyes sparkled. "Not just predators, any wildlife in need. But yes, even our competitors get medical care." "That's Dr. Walsh," she added, as a woman in green scrubs approached, peeling off latex gloves. Dr. Walsh, face tired but kind, greeted Coleman and eyed the trio of reptilian warriors with professional curiosity. "Perfect timing, Patricia. We just finished up surgery on your demonstration subjects." Coleman's smile widened. "Excellent. How are they?" "The wolf's ready for release. Bullet wound completely healed, good as new. The grizzly still needs another week for her paw infection, but she's responding to antibiotics." The Craxians froze in place. "Wolf," Thack managed, voice unsteady. "Oh yes." Dr. Walsh's tone was almost affectionate. "Dakota's a gray wolf. Someone shot her 6 weeks ago, but our orthopedic surgeon did a beautiful job on her shoulder." She led them into a large, glass-walled enclosure, landscaped to mimic forest. The animal inside moved with sinuous, predatory grace, yellow eyes keen and fearless as she watched the visitors. "She's not afraid," Tox whispered. "Why should she be?" Dr. Walsh made a few notes on her tablet. "She's never encountered your species. No learned fear. We'll release her into Yellowstone soon, far from humans. That's the point. Wild animals belong in wild places." The next enclosure held a bear that made even the Craxian warriors feel small. The animal was massive, fur thick and glossy, claws digging lazily at the ground. She stood up to investigate her guests, looming above the barrier with effortless strength. "Bertha," Dr. Walsh said, pride in her voice. 400 kilos, one of the biggest females we've treated. Garbage can injury, infected cut. She's responding well to treatment." Bertha settled her gaze on the aliens, deep brown eyes calm and appraising. Thack felt a bead of sweat trickle down his spine. "She's evaluating us. Probably wondering if you brought food," Dr. Walsh laughed. "Bears are always hungry, but we try to keep them wild, minimal human contact, appropriate diet, the works. Once she's healed, she'll go back to her territory." They moved past more enclosures. A pair of mountain lions, sleek and wary, one licking a shaved patch where stitches closed a deep wound. A black bear cub being coaxed to eat medicine-laced berries. Coyotes with tracking collars awaiting release after being trapped in city suburbs. Every animal, Coleman explained, represented a story of human-wildlife interaction, some tragic, many hopeful. "These animals," Thal said, voice hushed, "they're all healthy. Modern veterinary medicine," Dr. Walsh said with a shrug. "We can treat things that would have been fatal even a decade ago. Our success rate for large predators is over 80%. And once they're well enough, we release them back where they belong." She showed them a bank of screens displaying holographic maps, migration routes, genetic diversity graphs, predator-prey models. "We use satellite tracking to monitor their progress. Most integrate just fine back into wild populations." Coleman guided the group to a broad balcony overlooking the grounds. From here, the view was striking. Dozens of enclosures spread across rolling meadows and forested patches, each one designed to resemble natural habitat as closely as possible. Bears dozed in the shade. Wolves roamed grassy hills. Eagles perched atop simulated cliffs. It looked less like a prison and more like a carefully tended park, a living mosaic of nature, framed and protected by the hand of its greatest predator. "This is what I wanted you to see," Coleman said quietly. "Every animal here represents something your people misunderstood about Earth." Fact studied the landscape below, troubled. "What do you mean?" "You came expecting a world of savage predators, locked in a struggle for survival," Coleman explained. "What you found was a carefully managed ecosystem, where the apex predator, humans, protect and maintain every other population." The smallest Craxian gripped the railing, eyes wide. "The animals we fought, they were sick, injured, or defending what they thought was theirs," Coleman said. "The healthy ones avoided you completely." Coleman's voice shifted into lecture mode, drawing the attention of both the aliens and several passing humans. "Earth's predators learned long ago that humans are off the menu. But you said it yourselves, humans are apex predators." "That's true. But we're also the only apex predator in galactic history who works to preserve our competitors." She gestured out at the sprawling enclosures. "We spend billions every year on conservation, habitat protection, species reintroduction. Because we can. Because we've moved beyond simple competition." Her tone grew more serious. "Every species in this facility could kill an unarmed human. But they're not our enemies. They're our responsibility." Dr. Walsh rejoined them, scanning her discharge paperwork. "Interesting thing about apex predators, they shape whole ecosystems. When we reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone, it changed elk migrations, which changed vegetation, which affected fish, which changed river flows. Cascade effects." The aliens watched as she displayed data on shifting populations, genetic diversity, food web diagrams. "Remove the top predator," Dr. Walsh said, "and everything shifts to fill the gap, usually badly. We maintain these populations to control our ecosystem, but also to keep it healthy, complex, and resilient." The full weight of realization hit the Craxians. "You manage your entire world," Fax said softly. "We try to," Coleman replied. "It's complicated, but humans are good at complex problems. The animals you fought weren't wilderness creatures. They were part of a system, a managed, protected heritage." She fixed them with a keen, almost predatory smile. "You weren't fighting apex predators. You were vandalizing a nature preserve run by the galaxy's most successful apex predator species." Silence. Below, a wolf stretched in the sunlight. A bear snuffled in a patch of wildflowers. The pets, the wildlife, the predators in these facilities, the smallest Craxian said quietly, "They're all under human protection." "Not just protection," Coleman corrected, "management. We decide which species survive, which territories they occupy, which genetic lines continue. Every large predator on Earth exists because humans allow it to exist. And if you stopped allowing it," Thal asked, almost in a whisper. Coleman's voice was matter of fact, "then it wouldn't exist. We've already eliminated some species that couldn't coexist with civilization. The ones that remain are here because they've adapted to us, or because we value them." Dr. Walsh nodded. "Or because they're beautiful, or interesting, or we feel responsible." The trio of warriors looked out across the facility one last time. Dozens of apex predators, resting, recovering, being cared for by the very species they might once have hunted. "We were wrong about Earth," Thack murmured. Coleman met his gaze. "You were wrong about everything. You thought you were testing yourself against a death world. What you actually did was trespass in a sanctuary managed by the most successful apex predator in the galaxy." The silence lingered as Dr. Walsh approached, holding out a tablet. "Speaking of which, we should discuss reparations for the animals injured during your unauthorized hunting expedition." "Reparations?" Thack asked, confused. "Medical costs, habitat restoration, genetic monitoring, standard fees for wildlife harassment in protected areas." She showed them a digital bill. The numbers were, by any galactic standard, astronomical. Coleman's tone was lighter. We're prepared to waive the fees in exchange for your participation in a comprehensive education program. The smallest Craxian's crest drooped. Educational program? Your species clearly needs to understand Earth's ecosystem management. In exchange, you'll give testimony to other galactic governments about what happens when someone tries to hunt in humanity's backyard without permission. Coleman's smile had lost all its warmth. It was the smile of a true apex predator, explaining the rules to newcomers. We want everyone to know, Earth is not a test of courage or a hunting preserve. It's our home, and we protect what's ours. The Craxians looked at each other, at the humans, at the vast living hospital for Earth's most dangerous creatures. Their old arrogance was gone, replaced by the humility of survivors who realized just how far out of their depth they had been. We will need to update our species databases, Thal said, voice barely audible. Excellent, Coleman replied. Dr. Walsh will provide you with complete documentation for your records. As they made their way to the exit, the smallest Craxian stopped and looked back at the sprawling sanctuary, a humans feeding stray cats and tending to apex predators with equal care. What should we tell other species about Earth, he asked. Coleman considered for a moment. Tell them that Earth's apex predators aren't the ones with claws and fangs. The most dangerous species here builds hospitals for its competitors and feeds stray animals. She paused at the gate, glancing back at the bright green meadows dotted with survivors. And tell them we're very good at taking care of what's ours. All of it. The shuttle ride back to orbit was quiet, punctuated only by the frantic tapping of 3 Craxian warriors updating their first contact protocols. Below, Earth spun serenely, blue and green and wild, a world of 8 billion apex predators who had decided that real strength was taking care of their home, not just surviving it. They were wrong about Earth, and now, finally, they understood just how wrong. The silence on the shuttle ride back to orbit was thick enough to choke on. For the first time since the Craxian expedition had landed on Nexus Station, the 3 warriors sat without posturing, their scales dull with humility, talons nervously tapping at datapads. Each of them was busy, very busy, updating species threat assessments, planetary classification files, and galactic travel advisories. Dr. Coleman, watching from across the cabin, understood exactly what was happening. Survival instinct, pure and simple. These soldiers were making sure that no future Craxian warband would make the same mistake, wandering into the backyard of humanity and confusing their companions for prey. The shuttle's viewport framed the planet below, Earth turning in its slow dance, swaths of forest, sprawling continents, blue oceans wreathed with clouds. It was a beautiful world. It was also, the Craxians now knew, a fortress disguised as a garden. For a while, no one spoke. Then Thak cleared his throat, voice subdued. You said you manage all this? Not just the animals, but the entire ecosystem. Coleman nodded, tucking her tablet away. We try. Earth's a closed system. If something goes wrong with one species, it echoes through everything else. That's why we have teams monitoring everything from insect populations to the migration of whales. We track climate, measure genetic diversity, and try to maintain balance. Tox looked down at his claws, then at the digital readout of the rehabilitation center's population chart he'd surreptitiously copied. But you also remove species? Ones that don't fit. Yes. Coleman didn't soften it. When a species becomes too dangerous or destructive or can't coexist with humans, we intervene. Sometimes it means relocation, sometimes containment. In rare cases, like with invasive predators or certain diseases, it means extinction. The words landed heavily. Thal, who had faced wild predators with a blaster in hand, seemed more unsettled by this than any encounter in the forest. You can choose who lives and who doesn't. Coleman hesitated, then nodded. That's the reality of planetary management. But we don't do it lightly. Every decision gets debated, studied, and weighed against our values and the health of the entire biosphere. She met their eyes, serious. Humans are custodians, not just conquerors. That's our philosophy now. Or at least what we're striving for. A long silence. Then Thak exhaled, as if letting go of something brittle inside him. In our culture, strength is measured by conquest. How much land you hold, how many enemies you defeat. But on Earth, it seems strength is measured by how much you protect. Coleman gave a small, genuine smile. That's becoming true, yes. Not everyone agrees. There are still plenty of humans who want to dominate, to hunt, to take. But civilization is learning that our survival depends on cooperation, with nature, with each other. Apex predator doesn't mean destroyer. It means steward. Tox's crest lifted slightly. But when threatened, you fight back. Even the smallest animals protected your homes. Coleman laughed. Absolutely. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Every creature you met, dogs, cats, even seals, was defending their family, their territory. It's what we bred into them. It's what we bred into ourselves. But if you come in peace, you'll find Earth incredibly welcoming. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. That's the paradox. The galaxy thinks of apex predators as monsters, unstoppable, solitary killers. But the real secret to human dominance isn't our strength. It's our ability to cooperate, to organize, to care for things outside ourselves. She sat back, eyes shining with the pride of her entire species. We build hospitals for bears and wolves. We save injured eagles, relocate mountain lions, teach our children how to respect even the smallest spider. Earth is dangerous, but we've made it home by turning danger into diversity, competition into connection. The shuttle began its docking maneuver, the station's automated arms catching it with a magnetic thud. The tension in the cabin eased, if only a little. As the airlock hissed open, the first sight awaiting them was Ambassador Wilson, flanked by several galactic diplomats and an array of media drones hovering just above head height. Thak, Tox, and Thal straightened their armor, faces somber. Wilson smiled, polished, professional, and now clearly enjoying himself. Welcome back, gentlemen. I trust your tour was enlightening. Thak bowed his head. We have much to report. The media drones buzzed closer, holo cameras projecting the scene in real time across half a dozen planetary feeds. Wilson's smile sharpened. Will you be advising your government on updated Earth protocols? Yes, Thak said, voice firm. Earth is not what we believed. The risks are far greater. But also, so is the complexity. One of the Alterine trade ministers, her skin now more lavender than blue, asked, what advice would you give visiting delegates in the future? Tox spoke up, surprising even himself. Show respect. Ask permission. Do not interfere with local wildlife, no matter how small. Understand that every creature you meet may have a purpose, a protector, and a place in the system. Thal finished for him. And remember that the most dangerous thing on Earth is not what you see in the forests or the oceans. It's what you see in the cities. 8 billion apex predators who know how to protect what's theirs. There was a ripple of uneasy laughter, not all of it human. Coleman stepped forward. If your people would like, we can organize educational programs, guided tours, even research exchanges. There's so much more to Earth than just our predators. Wilson nodded. And Earth welcomes peaceful visitors. But we expect you to follow our protocols, because we have learned, at great cost, how to manage danger. One of the vegan diplomats, crystalline light flickering, asked in a hesitant tone, is it true you build sanctuaries for animals you could easily destroy? Wilson looked over at Coleman, then back at the room. Yes, because we value life, sometimes for its beauty, sometimes for its utility, sometimes for reasons we don't fully understand. Earth is complicated. It has to be for us to survive here. A brief hush. A younger Alterine minister raised his hand timidly. Are there other worlds like Earth in your sector? Coleman shook her head. Not quite like this one. Other garden worlds, yes, but none with our particular brand of chaos. The smallest Craxian, now finally seeming at peace, looked out the viewport at the spinning blue orb. I hope, one day, we can learn to care for our worlds the way you do. Wilson's reply was gentle. That's the real test of civilization. He stepped aside, gesturing for the visitors to lead the way into the station's main hall. The media drones hovered closer, transmitting images of the Craxians, a little battered, a little wiser, being welcomed as guests, not as conquerors. For the first time in living memory, Earth's reputation had changed, not as a death world to be feared, but as a home fiercely defended, endlessly complex, and astonishingly alive. The formal debriefing began in the largest conference chamber on Nexus Station, a setting that had seen its share of interstellar drama, trade disputes, peace treaties, even the occasional brawl between rival delegations. But never before had it hosted a scene quite like this. The Craxian warriors, their posture now less boastful and more reflective, stood at the center of a semicircle of envoys from across the Galactic Coalition. A murmur rippled through the crowd as Wilson and Dr. Coleman entered behind them, flanked by an entourage of legal advisors, ecological experts, and translators. Media drones hovered with silent anticipation, streaming every twitch and word to millions of viewers across the stars. The lead Alterine minister called the session to order, her translucent hands steepled before her. War Leader Thak, Lieutenant Tox, Warrior Thal, you have been called here to clarify the events that transpired during your recent unauthorized incursion to the planet known as Earth. You may begin your report. Thak hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward, voice stripped of the arrogance it had held days before. We believed we were entering a death world, unclaimed, wild, full of hazards, as our ancient traditions described. We expected only danger, and we found it. But what we truly found was far more complicated. He described, step by step, their first landing. The desolate residential zones, so easily misread as ruins, where the pack hunters had defended territory with ferocious loyalty. The solitary striped hunter in the cultivated garden. The near disaster by the river, where a pod of seals had driven them away with fearless barks and surging strength. He told how their weapons, tactics, and discipline had kept them alive, but how they had not, in fact, conquered anything. Instead, every victory had been over an animal that, by human standards, was a friend or neighbor or even a beloved pet. He told the story of their meeting with Wilson, the moment of humiliation and realization when the truth about Earth's apex predators was laid bare. He recounted the cultural exchange, the barbecue, the mingling with human families, the enormous dogs, the cats with ancient eyes, the bears and lions spoken of with the same offhand ease that other worlds reserve for thunderstorms or summer heat. And finally, the visit to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. We did not understand, Thak admitted. We thought humans merely survive their world, but humans manage it. They build hospitals for their enemies. They protect the very creatures that could destroy them. Their strength is not in conquest, but in stewardship. A hush fell over the chamber. It was the vegan delegate, a being of crystalline form and a reputation for tireless compassion, who broke it. You mean you did not encounter Earth's true apex predators at all? Dr. Coleman stepped in, voice calm but carrying. They did, in fact, but not as enemies, as neighbors, as protectors. The true apex predator on Earth is human, and every animal, from the fiercest wolf to the humblest stray, lives or dies by humanity's will. A ripple of shock and, for some, incredulity moved through the crowd. The Alterine minister leaned forward, her face earnest. Dr. Coleman, if your species is truly so powerful, why not drive all danger from your world? Why tolerate predators at all? Coleman smiled, the warmth of it touching even the oldest delegates. Because we've learned that a healthy world is a diverse world. Predators keep prey populations in check, shape ecosystems, maintain balance. Remove them, and everything suffers, plants, animals, even humans. So we work to preserve them, not just out of compassion, but out of necessity. Sometimes that means protecting wolves from extinction. Other times it means teaching a child to respect a snake, or a bear, or even a simple spider. The youngest of the Altarians, a diplomat not long out of academy, spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. And you care for these animals? Even after they have harmed your people? Wilson answered this time, with a look that was half pride and half world weariness. When an animal harms a human, It's almost always because a human made a mistake, got too close, ignored a warning, or acted without respect. We relocate problem animals, rehabilitate the injured, and sometimes, yes, we mourn when tragedy strikes. But we don't blame the animal for being what it is. A stir ran through the gallery. Here, among cultures where the strong routinely exterminated the dangerous, this philosophy was radical, almost subversive. The lead Craxian delegate, fact superior, his scales a deep iron gray, stood to address the assembly. Is it truly possible to manage an entire biosphere this way? To balance so many dangers and needs? Coleman's answer was honest. It isn't easy. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we lose species or allow new threats to spread. But the effort is what matters. We learn from our mistakes and adapt our systems. The lesson is that no world stays healthy through domination alone. Real mastery comes from understanding and respect. Tox, who had once bristled at any sign of weakness, now found himself adding softly, Earth is not a death world. It's a living world, complex, beautiful, and fiercely loved. We were wrong to judge it by its dangers, and we were wrong to judge humans by their kindness. A sense of quiet settled on the room. For the first time, the stories of death worlds seemed less like legends of terror and more like tales of challenge, cooperation, and hard-won wisdom. At last, the Altarai minister concluded, "We will update our records. Earth is not to be approached without consent or guidance from its stewards. Its living treasures must be respected." Coleman nodded, relief and satisfaction flickering across her face. "And if your worlds ever wish to learn more, Earth welcomes true guests, not conquerors." The session adjourned to applause, not raucous but steady and sincere, a sign of respect from a galaxy that now saw Earth in a new, complex light. As the crowds filed out, Wilson lingered with Coleman and the three Craxians at the side of the chamber. "You did well," he told Thack quietly. Thack bowed his head. "We made mistakes, but we have learned." Wilson's smile was genuine. "That's what matters. And that is why you'll always be welcome here, on Nexus and on Earth." In the hush that followed, the human and alien envoys looked out at the swirling lights of the station, and, just for a moment, saw the future of galactic diplomacy not as a contest of strength, but as a shared journey of care, humility, and understanding. After the historic session, word of the Craxian incident and Earth's true nature spread across the galactic network like a solar flare. News feeds replayed Wilson's explanations and Thack's humbled admissions in dozens of languages. Apex predator diplomacy, some called it. Others dubbed it, with a mix of respect and nervous awe, the day the death world talked back. On Nexus Station, the aftermath rippled through every corridor. Trade envoys who once debated tariffs now swapped rumors about what exactly lived in Earth's garden cities. Security officers joked darkly about needing updated threat assessments for everything from golden retrievers to grandmothers wielding golf clubs. Even the most seasoned diplomats checked their files, cross-referencing species codes and population estimates with new attention. The biggest change, though, was in the attitude of the Craxians themselves. They had arrived on Nexus Station as conquerors, certain of their martial superiority. Now, stripped of bravado, they moved with a wary deference, consulting with ecological advisors, absorbing protocols for interplanetary etiquette, and, most notably, volunteering for the very cultural exchange program they had once dismissed as beneath them. Dr. Coleman found herself at the center of a quiet revolution. She was inundated with requests for educational materials on Earth's ecosystem management, requests to tour human-wildlife sanctuaries, even requests for joint research on apex predator stewardship. Coleman, ever the teacher, organized a series of open seminars, using Earth's tangled food webs as a case study in the interconnectedness of all life. She found, to her surprise, that the most attentive students were not the Altairian philosophers or the vegan diplomats, but the Craxians, the very warriors who once thought only in terms of prey and predator. One day, at the close of a seminar about keystone species and trophic cascades, Tox lingered behind as the rest of the crowd filed out. Dr. Coleman, he said, his scales reflecting the soft blue light of the station. There's something I do not understand. On Craxia, we revere strength above all. The weak exist only to test the strong. If a predator fails to dominate, it perishes. If prey cannot evade, it is eaten. But Earth seems to be a place where everything has its place, even the weak. Why? Coleman considered her answer carefully. Earth was shaped by competition, just like Craxia. But the most successful species here, humans included, learned that real strength comes not from destruction, but from adaptation and cooperation. We value resilience, the ability to recover and help others do the same. Predators need prey, prey need plants, and the whole system is stronger for its diversity. Sometimes, protecting the vulnerable makes the whole world richer. Tox mulled this over, his tail flicking in thought. And if the strong choose not to protect, but to destroy, then the system collapses, Coleman replied. Predators overhunt, prey vanish, the plants are overgrazed, and soon, even the strongest starve. That's happened on Earth before. We learned the hard way. He nodded, subdued, but a glimmer of something, respect, maybe hope, shone in his gaze. Perhaps we have lessons yet to learn. That afternoon, the three Craxian warriors requested a private meeting with Ambassador Wilson. Coleman attended as an observer. Thack, voice steady but humble, offered an official apology for the incursion and for the harm caused to Earth's wildlife and reputation. We were ignorant, he said, but ignorance does not excuse harm. We accept responsibility, and we are ready to make amends. Wilson accepted with a formal nod. Reparations are a start. More important is your willingness to learn and to teach others what you've seen. Will you serve as envoys, witnesses to what stewardship really means? Thal answered, we will, for the safety of our own people and the health of any world we touch in the future. The details of reparations were hammered out over the next week. Medical equipment and supplies for Earth's wildlife centers. Craxian genetic engineers volunteering expertise for endangered species recovery. A standing invitation for Earth scientists to visit and advise on Craxia's rewilding projects. A joint research group was founded and, by unanimous consent, named the Stewards Accord. Meanwhile, across Nexus Station, the first true interstellar student cohort began classes at Coleman's invitation. Altarians, vegans, insectoid scholars, and Craxians sat side by side, puzzling over the tangled equations of ecosystem management and the subtle social contracts of mutualism. No one, not even the most skeptical, left unchanged. One rainy orbital night, as station daylights dimmed and quiet settled over the habitat rings, Coleman took a moment for herself on an observation deck. Earth was a blue-green pearl far below, rimmed with gold where cities burned through the clouds. She was joined, unexpectedly, by Wilson. He handed her a mug of coffee, and together they watched the turning planet in silence. You realize, Wilson said at last, this changes everything. Earth's reputation is, well, complicated now. We're not the monsters of the galaxy, but we're not harmless, either. Coleman smiled faintly. Maybe that's for the best. The galaxy should know Earth for what it is, a place of beauty, of danger, of stubborn, complicated life. She looked over at Wilson. Do you think they'll ever really understand us? Wilson sipped his coffee, eyes never leaving the view. Maybe, but even if they don't, they'll think twice before landing uninvited. They shared a quiet laugh, and, for the first time, both felt that the future was not a battlefield, but a wild, tangled, living world. One worth protecting, one worth sharing. The changes rippling outward from that first interstellar incident were subtle at first. Policy updates, new warning signs on spaceports, a fresh footnote in every navigational database. Earth, contact only under explicit invitation. Caution, planetary biosphere is under active stewardship. Non-compliance will result in reparations or worse. But the real transformation took root in the slow, stubborn shift of attitudes, on Nexus, on Craxia, across the Galactic Confederacy. Among the Craxians, What started as embarrassment became curiosity, then admiration. Their warriors, once proud of scars earned in battle, now wore the mark of the steward with equal pride, a small green and blue sigil, modeled after Earth, on their armor. It meant they had seen the wild world and come away wiser, not just stronger. Craxian science delegations arrived for guided tours of Earth's wildlife preserves, escorted by rangers and researchers who explained not just how to survive a dangerous ecosystem, but how to cultivate one. The first time a Craxian cub asked a human zookeeper how to keep a wolf healthy, and listened to the answer, the older generation realized the future was already changing. On Altaria, the influential Altarian Peace Guild invited Dr. Coleman to deliver a remote address. Her lecture, Coexistence and Complexity, the Human Approach to Planetary Management, was watched by billions. Clips of her explaining trophic cascades, the wolf's role in Yellowstone, and the story of the golden retriever pack leaders became memes, parodies, and, for a brief time, the most downloaded teaching modules in the Confederacy. The vegans, those crystalline beings who once shuddered at the idea of predation, found themselves oddly moved. Some even advocated, in a passionate council session, for the creation of peace gardens on worlds previously stripped of predators, citing Earth's model as proof that a truly harmonious world isn't one without danger, but one in which danger and beauty exist in dynamic balance. Even the insectoid hive minds, whose cold calculations had always dismissed mammals as unpredictable, began to study the mathematical elegance of Earth's food webs. Their scholars visited museums, libraries, and wildlife hospitals, filling communal mind banks with new insights. For the first time, their reports included the concept of stewardship as a marker of planetary advancement. But the biggest ripple was cultural, not scientific. It became fashionable among young galactic citizens to keep pets, real, living animals, not just artificial constructs. Craxian children learned to care for small lizards and, with a mixture of fear and pride, even befriended dogs on exchange visits to Earth. Altarian artists composed epic ballads about the garden world of paradox, while vegan playwrights staged dramas in which the apex predator was not the villain, but the wise protector of balance. Even the phrase, to take care of what's yours, took on new meaning in half a dozen languages, shifting from a warning to a quiet aspiration. On Earth itself, the impact was more subtle but no less profound. For centuries, humanity had looked to the stars and wondered what awaited beyond. Now, as exchange programs flourished and alien students arrived in twos and threes, some towering, some skittering, all wide-eyed, Earth had to become a teacher, not just a survivor. Ranger schools and veterinary colleges accepted their first non-human students. Some floundered, baffled by the complexities of life cycles and food webs. Others thrived, drawn by the joy of hands-on learning and, perhaps, by the feeling of being part of something ancient and living. A Craxian, son of a famous war leader, became the first alien to complete a full internship at Yellowstone, earning a park badge and an affectionate nickname from his fellow rangers, Bear Watcher. For Dr. Coleman, the greatest change was in the little things. She received letters, actual handwritten notes, sometimes transcribed from claws or tentacles, from students across the Confederacy. They sent sketches of wolves and eagles, of dogs and cats, of gardens lush with diversity. Some sent stories of home, a vegan child releasing an injured avian insect back to its flock, a Craxian cub feeding meat to an old, scarred dog, an Altarian school establishing the first sanctuary for their planet's native scavenger beasts. Each story was a small triumph, a living echo of Earth's lessons spreading among the stars. One afternoon, as Coleman finished reviewing an endless stream of student research proposals, she looked up to find Thak standing awkwardly in the doorway of her Nexus Station office. His armor bore the mark of the steward, freshly polished. "I hope this is a good time," Thak said, formal as ever, but his tone warmer. "Always, war leader." Coleman motioned him in. "Or should I call you Ranger Thak now?" He made a wry sound that might have been a laugh. "That title has unexpected meaning now. He took a seat across from her. I wanted to thank you. You changed the way my people see the universe and how we see ourselves. Coleman studied his face, strong, lined by battle and now by learning. I didn't do it alone. You listened. You risked being changed. He inclined his head, serious. My people are not done learning. Our world is wilder than Earth in some ways, less managed, more dangerous. But we have started. We have stewards now, and our young dream of being protectors, not just hunters. She smiled, genuinely moved. Then I think you'll be all right. He glanced out her office window, where the blue disk of Earth floated in the vastness, glowing with promise. Some in the Confederacy still fear you. Some will always see Earth as a threat. Coleman's voice was gentle, but unyielding. Then let them remember, we are dangerous. But not because we destroy. Because we care, and we never stop defending what's ours. Thack rose, offering her a salute. A gesture that, on Craxia, meant deepest respect. On my world, when we honor a teacher, we say, the pack is stronger for the wolf who shows the path. Coleman returned the salute, warmth in her eyes. And on mine, we say, take care of your pack. All of it. He nodded, and for a moment, the galaxy seemed smaller, a network not of empires and wars, but of living worlds and those willing to learn. The following year, the first Galactic Stewardship Conference was held on Nexus Station. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered to share best practices, scientific data, and stories. The theme, chosen unanimously, was simple: the strong protect the whole. And on the final day, as the sun rose over the spinning blue arc of Earth, a chorus of voices, alien and human, predator and prey, sang together the song of the new era, one not of conquest, but of care. The first Galactic Stewardship Conference was a sight no one could have predicted a generation earlier. Delegates from every corner of the Confederacy walked the polished halls of Nexus Station, their badges marked not just by rank or origin, but by the colors of their homeworld's ecosystems: emerald for forests, sapphire for oceans, gold for prairies, crimson for deserts. For once, conversations weren't about territory or trade, but about pollinator corridors, predator reintroduction, coral reef restoration, and, perhaps most remarkably, mutual responsibility. Panels were led by those who'd once been rivals. Craxian biologists swapping data with vegan botanists, Alterian philosophers exploring the ethics of intervention with human wildlife managers. Every session buzzed with the energy of first encounters, not just between species, but between worldviews, as the idea of stewardship, once a uniquely Terran philosophy, began to root itself far beyond Earth. Coleman and Thack stood together on the balcony overlooking the bustling atrium, watching as a group of young Altarians debated the best way to track migratory herds using satellite telemetry. Nearby, a trio of insectoid scholars were huddled over a VR simulation of prairie restoration, trading notes with a human park ranger. Even the skeptical, hard-edged Craxian elders were seen quietly watching from the edges, eyes glinting with a mix of nostalgia and reluctant hope. You know, Coleman said, sipping her coffee, I used to wonder if we were doing enough. If Earth's messy, patchwork stewardship was just a fragile experiment, something that might fall apart under galactic scrutiny. Thack gave her a sideways glance, the deep lines of his face softer than they'd once been. We all wondered. On my world, steward was once a word for the old and the weak, those too slow for the hunt. Now it is the mark of those strong enough to care for the future. That is your doing, Patricia. She shook her head, a little embarrassed. It's not mine. It belongs to everyone who is willing to learn and to change, including you, war leader. He smiled, a real smile, with teeth, and nodded toward the conference floor. Look, your world's lessons are no longer only yours. A moment later, the ceremony began. On stage, representatives from every species stood together, a visual testament to the idea that had taken root. The strong do not simply survive, or conquer, or endure. They protect. They heal. They invest in what will outlast them. The Alterian minister opened the conference's final address. In the shadow of Earth, we have seen that the highest calling of any species is not dominance, but stewardship. We choose not just to survive, but to care for our homes, our neighbors, even our ancient rivals. Let this be our legacy and our promise. One by one, voices from every world pledge their commitment to safeguard wild places, to value diversity, to measure success not only in wealth or conquest, but in the flourishing of life itself. The room vibrated with the weight of so many futures, all suddenly, wonderfully possible. Afterward, as the crowds mingled and celebrated, Wilson found Coleman and Thack near a window overlooking the station's gardens. The old ambassador raised his glass. To Earth, garden, fortress, and teacher, may we never stop surprising the galaxy. Coleman laughed, and Thack, startled but pleased, joined in. For a long moment, there was only laughter and light, and the unspoken understanding that the galaxy had changed, not with a battle, but with a lesson. As the sun set behind the spinning curve of Nexus Station, Coleman watched the blue-green jewel of Earth, distant but alive, cradled in starlight. She thought of wolves and wildflowers, of grandmothers chasing off bears, of children teaching aliens about hamsters, of injured predators given a second chance. She thought of what it meant to belong, to protect, to care. And as the conference lights burned late into the night and the first planetary stewardship treaties were signed, the galaxy moved forward, not in conquest, but in kinship. Each world, each species, each voice adding to a tapestry as wild and rich as Earth itself. They were wrong about Earth, and now, together, they would never stop getting it right.